Hi, this is Ann. Now, earlier today, I went ahead and I talked for a little bit. I talked for about 15 minutes, which is pretty good for me. But after my daughter uploaded the video, I was trying to think. I've been, you've seen me play the piano. You've seen us play the piano. You've seen us. You've heard us sing. And you've seen us where we say our beautiful Blessed Mother's rosaries, and we've taken you for a tour of our chapel, and we've even taken you for a tour out in the backyard, and I talk about different things. But tonight I'd like to kind of get a little bit more down to earth and just really talk to you like straight on about myself, about Jesus now in heaven, and just, a lot of things. First of all, I'd like to tell you about how we became Catholic. Now, most people would say, well, this lady here was more likely she comes from a Catholic family. She was baptized as a baby, went to catechism, and she received her first communion. She was confirmed in the church, and she's went on. She goes to church. She seems like a very religious lady, and that's usually. I'm not saying every Catholic has gone that route, but for a lot of Catholics, that's pretty much the norm. In my case, it was a little different. In our case, what happened was when my brother and I were young, my parents are really great. My mom, dad. Now, my father, he's up in heaven. He passed away about 2 years ago, and he's up in heaven now, and we miss him. But what happened was my mom kind of mentioned, and my mom, she's a real nice lady. She mentioned that, she says, hey, she says, Ann, and she said to my brother and I, she said, as far as like church or religion, we want you to be 18 years old before you go to church or join a religion, because by the time you're 18, you'll kind of have an idea, where you can kind of pick and choose what you want to do. Back then, that was not so unusual because, people sometimes said, hey, we want our, instead of, some people felt that, they didn't want to take their kids to church and then later on, find out, well, Johnny or Betty wanted to, when they turned 18 or 20, they'd rather be a different religion or a different denomination, that type of thing. So that's where that came from. And so what happened was, at that time, I remember, like from one of my early experiences, I was probably I'd say about 3 or 4 years old. And at that time, we were living in the Monterey area. And Monterey is in California. And it's about 2 hours south of San Francisco. And we lived by the beach. We were in a suburb by the beach. So if you went so many blocks down, we're probably about 10, 14 blocks away, then you would be there on the sandy beach. And Monterey is a beautiful area. It's a wealthy area, and then they have areas where you have a lot of wealthy people living there. You have Pebble Beach, Carmel, Big Sur, Pacific Grove, and then you have other areas that are more working class or middle class. And so we kind of live more in the kind of the middle class, working class area. And so the first house I grew up in, To me, the house seemed humongous. But I found out later that it was a two-bedroom house. It was a redwood house, very unique. And my father, he went to work 8 to 5. My mom was a full-time homemaker, and she worked hard every day. Made sure the meals were always there. Took care of my brother and I. She managed the money. She she did everything that a good mother and a good wife or homemaker would do. And so we had the one TV, the one telephone, that type of thing. This was in the 60s. And so what happened was, one time we had a tiny backyard, and of course when you're a lot of times when you're especially in California excuse me let me get something to drink here for a minute. I got a little bit of a frog in my throat. Thank you. Didn't mean to be rude. But what it is we had a small backyard. It had grass in the back, and on the side of the house there was like a little area on the side, and there's like 2 trash cans. And I remember I used to ride my little tricycle out in the backyard, and then sometimes in the afternoon I like to go to the side of the house. The whole property was fenced in, and I remember that day I was playing with my mom gave me some old pots and pans, and you kind of gather up dirt, and you get like little rocks and things, and maybe some leaves and things, and you make your own kind of mud stew. And I was pretending to be Ann Homemaker at the age of 3 or 4. And it was a sunny day. I remember it was a sunny day, and I believe my mom was in the house. My brother was someplace else. He was probably with his friends, or he might have been in school. And I remember that day, as I was cooking, and my mom, she believes in God. My father believes in God, but like I said, we didn't go to church. At that time, we didn't have a Bible in the house. So, I just kind of, so on Sundays, Sundays were pretty much like Saturdays, or, it's, when you're young, you're not in school, so every day kind of flows into the next day, the next day. And so I was sitting there making this stew. I was playing around, and I can tell you, honestly, I could feel the presence of God. And I remember I could feel it was our beautiful Father in heaven, and I could feel His presence around me, above me, and He was there with me, as a loving Father, as a loving companion, saying, hey, I'm with you here, and go ahead and play, enjoy your kitchen play. I'm keeping you company. I'm here with you. I'm loving you. And I remember how loved I felt. And that was when I was about 3, 4 years old. And then when I was 7, I remember I was in school at the time, and a lot of my classmates, they had these pretty little books on their desks at school. And so at that time, I was trying to I was saying, hey, those are some pretty books. I mean, where'd you get those books? And they says, well, we're going to catechism after school. And I remember there was a Catholic church near our house. It was about 2-3 blocks away. And but naturally we didn't go. And so one day my friend says, well, did you want to come with me? But I remember my mom was emphasizing, hey, you know, kind of like, wait till you're 18. So, but I wanted to go. So I went with a friend of mine, and we went, it was right after school, and I remember walking in, and it was kind of dark inside, and they at that time they had nuns who were teaching, you know, catechism, and I remember seeing the habits, and everything was a bit foreign to me because I was lost. You know, I didn't know what was, you know, and I remember everybody opened up their books, and I can't remember everything. That's pretty much what I remember, going in there, and then afterwards, I came home, and my mom says, well, what happened to you? You know, she was worried about me. It's like, well, why are you late? I mean, what happened? And I hate to admit it, but I lied to my mother because I didn't want to tell her I went to church because we were not supposed to go to church until we were 18, until we were old enough to make our own choice. So I lied to my mom, which is not a good thing. And then after that, I came in the house, and she believed me. Then at that time, one of the nuns came knocking at the door, and the reason she came was to find out why our family was not registered with the parish. And my mom had no idea. Yeah, she opened the door, and she was very nice with the nun, but my mom was like in shock, and she says, and of course the nun was in shock, and so anyway, I won't go into all the details, but my mom was, she was not happy with me because I had lied to her about going to a friend's house, plus two, I had broken, it was kind of a promise or a rule that we would, not go to church till we were 18 or, after. And so she was pretty upset. She was very upset. And then, I felt, naturally, it was just, it was a very big moment. And then after that, I remember my dad came home and my brother came home. They found out, and my brother was very disappointed in me, but, because he knew, it's like, you're supposed to wait till you're 18. And of course, my brother didn't want to see my mom being hurt or upset, and I understand that. And so after that, things continued on with my life. And then everything went great. I was, like, through elementary school, it seems like, I was sort of, I wasn't the smartest student in the class, but, I sat up straight. I tried to obey the rules. I really like it when first thing in the morning we would say the Pledge of Allegiance and sing, patriotic songs, and usually I got a pretty good report card and everything. And then when I was after 5th grade, my parents found another house that was larger, because with a 2-bedroom house, my brother and I had to share a room, and my brother was, he was sleeping in a hideaway, he was sleeping basically on the couch, but it was like a hideaway bed. And so my parents were looking for a larger house so my brother and I could each have a room, and it was nice. We were very, very excited about it. Of course, back then, the homes were, a lot more reasonably priced. Even though Monterey is a very expensive area to live in, even in California, it's a very expensive area to live in. We were very excited, and then then I started at a new elementary school for 6th grade, and then all of a sudden I don't know how to describe it to you, but by this time it's like the early 70s, and everybody was wearing bell bottoms, and you know, everybody, you know, like the young ladies had long, pretty hair, you know, long, silky hair, and you know, and you know, everybody had that, you know, the cool look and everything. And but my mom, you know, she's a good mom, but I just kind of wore the everyday clothes. I pretty much wore a dress, the bobby socks, some, you know, dress shoes, and everyone else was wearing kind of the flares and the belt. I kind of stuck out, and so and then my hair, my hair has always been, you know, thick, wavy, kind of, you know, thick and wavy kind of, you know, you know, back then they didn't have the type of hair straighteners like they got now. And of course, you know, my brother and I were getting an allowance every week, but you know, my allowance, 25, I think it was like 25 cents or 50 cents a week, you know, wasn't going to pay for, you know, straightening my hair, you know. So anyway, so I started getting picked on in 6th grade. And, you know, you know, people, some of the young guys would say, oh, you know, you're ugly, or, you know, things like that. And then I thought, well, things would change once I got into junior high. And then by the time I got into junior high, I had the long hair, but I still kind of wore, you know, kind of old, you know, not the kind of old-timey clothes. I still wore the dresses, the skirt with the blouse, and everyone else was wearing jeans and t-shirts, the pretty long hair, and I definitely didn't fit in. And I was really, really shy. I mean, it's like, I remember, I mean, I'm way different now, but I remember since the time I was born until really I was shy, even, I'd say up until about my 30s. And by the time I hit my 30s, I started getting a lot more open and more friendlier. But that's another story. So anyway, I went through junior high, and all 3 years, I'm not going to lie to you, we did okay in school. Academically, again, we were not at the top of the class. Now my brother, he was always a straight A student. I mean, just really did great. He was very popular. He just had, you know, he's got that personality where he could make you laugh. He was just very popular. He was very smart. He had the whole package, you know. Myself, those three years in junior high, kids picked on me, threw stuff at me, called me names, you know, tripped me up where I'd fall, you know, called me ugly, and, you know, just all sorts of things, because I was a slow grower, and it was just everything. I mean, I couldn't do anything right socially. It just was just a mess. And I started developing, you know, like, I got to a point where I started dreading going to school, and, you know, and so, you know, I'd throw up, you know, in the mornings, and I just, you know, and so for those 3 years, I'd have like one friend at a time, but I was definitely, there's always like one or two big outcasts. Well, I was one of the two big outcasts in 7th and 8th and 9th grade. And of course, in California, they're called junior high, and in some places, you know, in other places called middle school. But back in the day, it was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade was junior high. So then at that point, we graduated from junior high, and then we went to a different high school. We went to a high school in Monterey, and so at that point, you know, it was out of our city, and I had to go to a different city to go to a different high school. And so I thought, well, things might be different, you know. And my brother, I remember the first day of school, he drove me to school, and he says, you know, I went to this high school, you know, my brother was very popular. He's just really smart. He had really high grades. He's very popular. He belonged to clubs, and of course, my brother he's born with a God-blessed gift of art. he is. I am so proud of my brother. He's just one of the best artists. He's done so many things. He's been, a curator, a director of a museum. He's been a, he's a just fantastic artist. He right now he teaches art in college. He's been doing it for many years. He teaches art in college. He's taught at some very prestigious colleges. Him and his wife both. They're just really very talented artists, very well known. Their works have been displayed in museums. My brother's even been on TV when he was, I remember back in the day. I'm just very proud of my brother. I'm proud of his wife, naturally, and of course I'm proud of my parents. And so, but something happened. What happened was I was in my junior year. It was 1977, and I remember during the time, like from elementary school all the way up to high school, the thing I loved about my parents is that they would watch some really good movies. They watched like the Ten Commandments. They would watch Ben-Hur, the King of Kings. We would watch movies about Jesus, and on Heaven we would watch. They watched a lot of religious movies. My dad, he loved Billy Graham. When Billy Graham came on TV, my dad would be just, you could see, the change over him. He'd be very soft, and you could tell he was touched by our beautiful Holy Spirit. And on Heaven, he just, he was very, the only thing is, my father at that time, he's a very hardworking man, very good dad, very good husband, hard worker. It's just, the only thing is he didn't believe in organized religion. And so, it was just, that was his belief. And so, but I remember my brother being popular with the ladies. One of the young ladies that he liked, I think he was in junior high or high school at that time, and he was, my brother's 5 years older than me. And I remember one of the young ladies, she was a religious young lady, and she gave my brother a really nice Bible. And then later on, when my brother moved to another city to get his bachelor's degree, and eventually he got his master's degree, I kind of, I was kind of like near his closet, and I saw the Bible, and I plucked out the Bible. It was something he kind of left behind. And I remember I read the Bible. I remember picking up the Bible, and I read the Bible. I think I was about 16, 17 years old. And I read the Bible from front to back. I read the Old Testament all the way to the New Testament. And I already knew, even when I was a kid, when I was watching movies about, Jesus, the King of Kings, or like Ben-Hur, I already knew. It's like, when you see Jesus on the cross, and he's died on the cross for the love of us, for our sins, and he's dying so that we can have life, and life to its fullest. I already knew, when I was watching those movies, I says, yes, Jesus is the Son of God. And then when I read the Bible, and as I read the Bible, I, especially, from the Old Testament, into the New Testament, and of course I know Jesus is the true Son of God. But I learned a lot about our beautiful Father in heaven. And then when I kept seeing, like, from the time of the Garden of Eden, or since the beginning of time, Garden of Eden, all the way to, towards the end of the Bible, and I said, well, the Bible really is a love story between God and his people. because God shows us over and over again how much He loves us, how much He keeps trying. He does. You see it, especially in every way. In the Old Testament, in the New Testament, you see where God is showing us how much He loves us, how much He, how God wants us to be close to Him, as like, as children, as as companions, as what I'm saying. It's you just know it. You just know that it's like God truly loves each and every one of us, and it's like God, it's like we're all of us, everybody in the whole world, since the very beginning of time, we're all God's children, and He loves each and every one of us just the same, and it's just He wants the best for us, and there's things going on, like we know about the bad thing out there, and I usually just call it or the bad thing. But we also know that we're human too, and then we make mistakes. I've made lots of mistakes. I know I've been a sinner since day one. I think I'm not proud of it. It's like I can see where even from it's hardly a day goes by where I can keep things straight. But it's like every day, it's like I'm going to try to do better. I'm going to try to do better. I'm going to try to do better. But also, too, what I've seen with God is His compassion, His forgiveness. When you go through the whole Bible, you can see it over and over again. But also, too, I'm also going to tell you about, in my own life, because I'm going to tell you, I think, it's like, what happened was, I was they came up with this big, it was like a weekly episode. It was like a series, and the movie was called Jesus of Nazareth, and it had a lot of big stars in the movie. It was really nice because it was finally a big budget movie about Jesus, the Holy Family on heaven. And you see the apostles, and it was very well made. And I remember watching, our whole family was watching Jesus of Nazareth. And at that time, if you look at my history that I was just telling you about, I was picked on real bad. I was really picked on real bad at school. When you've been told that you're ugly or you're worthless or you're just nothing, people make fun of you, they trip you up, they throw things at you, they put stuff in your locker. The thing is, and you're kind of like, you only have maybe one friend if you're lucky. Then I was watching Jesus of Nazareth, and I was looking at Jesus, and I noticed there's many things about Jesus, but I noticed that Jesus loves everyone. He don't care who you are, what you look like, where you come from, and I noticed, like, especially people on the fringes, of society, people who are handicapped, people who didn't fit in, for whatever reason, people, people who were prostitutes, people that, that other people look down on. And I was identifying with this because I felt like, every day going to the school I really dreaded it. And it's not that the school was bad. Going to school is a good thing, but the social aspect of it, it was a nightmare. I'm not going to lie to you. It was an absolute nightmare. And so, and then I saw Jesus in the way, the man who was playing the part of Jesus, he's very nice looking, and of course Jesus is very, very good looking. We're all in heaven, Um, and our beautiful Father in heaven, you know, our beautiful Holy Spirit, you know, our beautiful Blessed Mother, our beautiful Papa Joseph, and on heaven, they just, you know, um, grandmas on heaven, they're beautiful inside out. Um, and so, and it just, I was looking and I said, you know, if, if Jesus loves this person, I know he loves me because Jesus is God. He's the Son of God. And, you know, and I just like, at that time, you know, I was watching Jesus of Nazareth, and then my birthday came around, and I remember my brother, and at that time, you know, he was really living in another city, and for a birthday gift, he gave me the book, and it was like a, you know, you get those books that are, you can get them from the bookstore where the book is based off of the movie, you know. So this book was based off of Jesus of Nazareth, and it had beautiful color photos from the movie and everything, and commentary, and they talked about the movie. And you know, I looked at, you know, pictures of Jesus and our Holy Family and the apostles. I looked at I was so, I remember my brother wrote a really nice inscription in there to me, and I'll be really honest with you. I fell in love with Jesus. I fell in love with Jesus in every level you can think of. I fell in love with Jesus. I know Jesus is my Lord and Savior. I know He's God. He's the Son of God. But also, I fell in love with Jesus as a person. You know, he's like, you know, he's like he's the man of my dreams. He's the man of my heart. He's my everything. You know, with all in heaven. And so, you know, and the thing is, my brother now, you see me playing the piano in some of the videos, and so my big thing was, you know, music. But I can't draw like my brother, but I was pretty good at copying. And so right after that, I started copying pictures from the book. And I drew Jesus' face. I drew Jesus on the cross. And I remember what I did was, it was one night I was in my room, and I had like a little bench thing, and I drew a picture of Jesus' face, and I got to admit, even my brother says, he says, you know, Ann, you draw real good, but what it is, I copy real well. I copy real well. And so I went ahead and I put the picture of Jesus, and I remember that night I sat down on the floor, and you know, I remember it was at nighttime, my parents were sleeping, and I was talking with Jesus, and it's almost like in your mind's eye, I could see Jesus up like on a cloud. He's walking back and forth, and I remember feeling a very strong presence of our beautiful Father in heaven. And now I also know our beautiful Holy Spirit is there as well, you know, with their Blessed Mother, Papa Joseph, and on heaven. But I could feel our beautiful Father in heaven's presence, very, just like when I was young. Yeah, I could feel our beautiful Father in heaven's presence very strong. And I remember later that night, which is rare, it was like, I think it was around midnight, a little bit after midnight, and my parents had sliding glass doors. And then I went out to the backyard, and I felt like, you know, God our Father was calling me out to the backyard. And I went out towards the backyard, and I had a spiritual experience. You know it. You can feel when God is with you, in you, all around you, is you. See, the thing is, I was telling Rose about a movie called Wuthering Heights. And it's a black and white movie. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it. Some of you have seen it. And it's a love story. And there's a part where Merle Oberon, she's a pretty lady with the dark hair, and she's in love with Heathcliff, who's, you know, he's not a rich guy, and she comes from a wealthy family. But I remember one night she was going through just a struggle because she wanted to marry the rich guy down the road who was more acceptable, but she was in love with Heathcliff, and she was talking with the housekeeper, and there's a short part where they're in the kitchen, her and the housekeeper, and she has her back turned towards the camera, and there's a lightning flash, and then she turns around and she's got tears coming down her face, and she was saying, even though she knows what she should do, it was like, she says, I am Heathcliff. And, when she said that, it had a lot of meanings because she says it was like saying that her and Heathcliff were like one person. And that's how I feel about Jesus and on heaven, is that we're as one. And to me, I'm also, I know I'm a child of God. I mean, I'm this small also too, but I also know that that type of love is like, once in an eternity. You just it's really, it's hard to put into words. And then so I remember at that time, it was after that. It was a couple of years before. My friend and I, we went downtown Monterey, and they have this beautiful cathedral. It was built around the time of the California missions. Now, in case for anybody who don't know for people who are not, who don't have too much information about the California missions, it was a group of Spaniards. I don't know if they were Jesuits or Franciscans. I have to look that up. I'm sorry. I'm not sure on that. But anyway, they built a whole bunch of Spanish missions. Now, they didn't build them. The Native Americans built the missions. And they used Native American labor, and they said they converted a lot of Native Americans. But also, I have mixed feelings about it because I know a lot of Native Americans died, and I heard some were abused, and there are some mass graves next to some of the missions. So some people says it was because they got a disease, from Europe, and they had no, immunity to fight it off. So, only Jesus and all in heaven know, But to me, I just felt there's something there. But nonetheless, there's a whole bunch of missions that go from past, like a little further north of San Francisco, all the way down to pretty much the border near Mexico. And so the San Carlos Cathedral in Monterey was related to the missions. But you hear the name Father Serra. I believe he's a saint at this point, Saint Father Serra. And so I remember my friend and I, we walked. I remember walking into the church, and this was like about a year before. I'd seen Jesus of Nazareth, and my brother had given me the book and everything, and I was having very spiritual experiences. And I remember walking through the church, and I remember looking around, and of course, when you haven't really been inside of a church, and then a Catholic church at that, I looked around in amazement. I was just looking around, and because some people would say, "Hey, and you're a heathen. You've never been to a church, never walked into a church." So I was looking around, but I remember what was so different about it was I started feeling like this kind of, it's like a dizzy feeling, but it was kind of a swirling feeling. It's a good swirling feeling. And I walked out of there and I said, well, that was kind of unusual. Then I remember, and then now we get back up to the present time. Here, when I told you about my experience with, the beautiful experience, the love I had from God our Father on the patio that night, it wasn't too long after that. I had to take summer school. I was missing a few credits, I needed a few credits in order to graduate high school, so I needed to go to summer school. So at that time, physically, I was much better shape, but I've never really been in like really good physical shape. I was never good in PE for some reason. I don't know what it was. I didn't know what it was at that time. I just wasn't really good in PE. But I took it was a tennis course, and I remember I didn't do too well, but I needed the course to graduate high school. And so I remember that one day, I'm just going to tell you, it's like I heard our beautiful Father in heaven, he let me know. He said, go towards the top of Monterey. Now Monterey kind of, it's almost like San Francisco. It has like a little bit of a slope, and then you get down towards the wharf and then the ocean and the beach and everything. It's not as high like San Francisco, but it still has like an area kind of that goes up. It's like it's like a neighborhood area, and a lot of wealthy people live there. I mean, it's a nice area. But I remember there was a park up there at the very top. Because my friend and I, we went up there. And so we walked up there, and I got on the swings. And I remember I was on the swing, swinging back and forth. And then our beautiful Father in heaven let me know, it was like, go down to the church. And the only church, I knew which church our beautiful Father in heaven was talking about. He says, go down to the church. So I walked down to the church that my friend and I had went to a year before. And I remember walking in, and it must have been pretty early. It had to be fairly early in the morning. So, because I'm going back in time, it had to be fairly early in the morning. They had like a early morning mass, and of course I didn't know what mass was at that time. You have to understand, I had read the Bible, I'd seen movies about Jesus and all, a Holy Family and all in heaven, but I didn't have a lot of theological knowledge. So the thing is, so I walked in, and they were having mass, and I remember I sat in the bench, and I was really upset. And what really upset me is because I felt that our beautiful Father in heaven, if you look all through the Bible, no matter how hard our beautiful Father in heaven tries to love us over and over again. And don't get me wrong, life, can be rough. I mean, life can be rough, for all of us. But, our beautiful Father in heaven wants things better for us. He really does. He wants us to have the best. But, down here on earth, it's like, this is like, this is where, it's sort of like, like it mentions in the Bible, it's sort of like you're set into the fire, but then you turn out to be this beautiful piece of glass. And so, in a sense, I walked in there and I started crying and crying and crying, because for me, I know I had my earthly father and my earthly mother, but our beautiful Father in heaven had just, it's like I could see our beautiful Father in heaven in my mind, and it's like I could picture myself as a little child sitting on his lap, holding him, kissing his cheek, holding his hand, and we're walking through the forest, and he has such loving eyes. He's very, very handsome, and he's just very loving. His eyes full of love and compassion, and just everything that's good and beautiful. And so I started crying and crying and crying. It's like, why do we keep hurting our Father in heaven? Why do we keep doing this? Why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep, sinning and hurting people, hurting my brothers and sisters, hurting my parents, hurting anybody, anybody? I just keep, just like I just was upset about everything. And I started crying and crying and crying and crying. And I remember falling off the bench, and then I was crying on the tile, and then blood started coming out of my nose. And then by that time the mass was pretty much close to being over. I didn't know, I didn't understand what mass was. I just, I do now, it's but so then I remember Father John, he came around he came around as fast as he could, and another lady came up to me, and that nice lady, her name is Ophelia, and she's a beautiful lady, and she's my godmother. She's up in heaven right now. My godfather lives in Georgia, and believe me, Ophelia and Frank took me in just like family. The whole family did. And but Father John came around, and I remember he says, are you okay? And then we were walking into the rectory. The rectory is like on the side of the altar. It's like the room where the priest changes his into like robes and stuff. And he asked me, "Do you know?" He asked me. I think he asked me. I forgot what he asked me. How he put it. Like, did I know who the Blessed Trinity was, or did I know who Jesus? And I says yes. It's you have the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And and I don't know if he asked me if I knew who Jesus was. I said Jesus is the Son of God. And then I remember we went over to the rectory, and they came over. They got me some tea and some toast, and I was still very, very upset. And they asked me, "Are you Catholic?" And I said no. And then Ophelia, she stayed with me, and she told Father John. She said, "Look, Ann lives pretty close to where I live, and I was only 17 at the time, and we lived a few blocks away from each other, which was great." She said, I'll drive Ann home." And so she went ahead and drove us home, and then she drove us to her house first. And then I remember after that, we were like mother and daughter. I mean, just close. I mean, it was just, automatically, she just took me in just like family. And then after that, I remember we went to go see Father John again, and I met another priest, another Father, Bonjean, I believe his name was. And then at that point, they asked me, "Well, are you interested in becoming Catholic?" And I said, yes. And then usually in the Catholic Church, by the time you're like my age, I was kind of beyond catechism. And catechism usually goes from like first grade, at least right now, it goes from first grade till about 8th grade. Or, even kindergarten to 8th grade, I'm sorry. And you go every year. But once you're like an adult, you go to like an adult catechism class, which you go for about 6 months, I believe. And then, then you get you get baptized, you get your first communion confirmed into the church. So Ophelia was teaching catechism, but she was teaching like the oldest class, which was the confirmation class. And she told Father John, she says, "Look, I can teach Ann catechism." And he says, "Oh, okay, well that's fine." And then I remember going over to her house that evening, and she says, "Ann, I'm sorry, but the only book I have is like a child's catechism book." And so she started, I'd go over to her house, and we got closer and closer. We'd go to McDonald's to have cups of tea and things like that. And her and I became like really, really close. And she was like a mom to me, and Frank's like a dad to me. The whole family really adopted me. I'm so thankful. And then I remember, it was about 3 weeks out, and then she told Father John, she says, "Well, Ann is, she's been taught everything." And then Father John said, now Father John was from Ireland, and he, prior to becoming a priest, he had been in a monastery for about 20 something years, and he was in a very strict monastery. Then after that, he became a civilian priest. He got out, he became a civilian priest. He came to the United States. And I'm going to tell you, the Irish priests, they're really great. And I remember he told me, he says, Ann, he said, let's do something special. He says, I've never done this, and the whole time I've been a priest or a monk. He says, why don't we have a special ceremony? And, you know, at the time I was young, I was 17 and a half. You don't grasp, sometimes how much people are, how much they're going out of the way for you, or they're doing something really big for you. And so then he says, how about, we have a special mass on Saturday night after, the main mass. We'll have one like Saturday night. And then Ophelia, my godmother, says yes. And then we'll have a reception at my house. And, she had bought a beautiful cake and, the punch and everything. She even bought some, I think she got some champagne or wine or something like that. And so we went to Kmart, and I'm sorry to see Kmart's in problems right now, but anyway, we went to Kmart and we found this long white dress, and it was like it was all white, and it had pretty little roses on it. And my godmother made this pretty long white veil, and I remember before, now, again, I was 17 and a half years old. I wasn't 18. So my parents, naturally, they wanted me to wait till I was 18. So they kind of told me, are you going to do this? And if you do, there's a price to pay, So, and it's not that my parents didn't love me. It's just they wanted me to wait till I was 18. So I said, no, I'm going to church, and I want to marry Jesus and on heaven, the love of my life, the loves of my life. And then so I got dressed and then went over to my godmother's house, or my godmother picked me up. It was one or the other, because I think I might have had a permit. That's what it was. I still didn't have my license. And then we went down to the church, and as we got to the church, people were coming out from a previous mass, and they all thought, I was a bride, because I had a white veil, long white veil, and I had a pretty white dress. And I remember Father John made everything so nice with Ophelia. He took out like 2 wedding kneelers that they used for weddings, and what was so special was Ophelia and Frank's whole family showed up. And there were also 2 nuns who were from Italy, and they came. And then I remember I was baptized. We received First Communion. We were confirmed in the church, and it was a beautiful ceremony. It was extraordinary. And I remember at the end of the ceremony, there was a lady that came in to the church. It was an older lady, and she smiled, and she had tears in her eyes. And she says, this is just so beautiful. That was just so beautiful. And she was crying, and I was so happy, because it's like, I'm married to Jesus now in heaven, and I'm a Catholic, I'm a Christian, and I was just so thankful, so in love, so thankful, so happy. And so that's how I became Catholic. And the interesting thing is, when I got we went over to my godmother's house for the reception, and Father John helped me cut the cake, and we had punch, and I even had a little something to drink. And I remember playing the piano, and I showed everybody the pictures of Jesus that we had copied. And then when I went home, I was grounded for 2 weeks. But the interesting thing was, about a year later, my mom and dad said, my mom's told me, she says, you becoming Catholic was one of the best things that could have happened, because they seen this big change in me. It was a humongous change in me. It was like a whole 360. It's like you know, um, it was just so, incredible. And so the thing is, as a Catholic, you have, different Catholics. Some are more conservative and in the middle and liberal. I'm probably more on the liberal side, even though you're saying, well, Anne has a lot of statues and pictures, and but she's, she's, you know, um, even our Twitter site is religious slash handicap. It's both, because um, we're handicapped ourselves, and but I'm gonna tell you, um, you know, it's just, you know, I want to talk more too, about our beautiful Blessed Mother, how she's our mother, Papa Joseph, how I put our Blessed Mother and Papa Joseph with our Blessed Trinity, because we're truly, Jesus and all in heaven, we're all like one big beautiful, we're all one big beautiful family, all of us, every one of us around the world, and I don't want to exclude anybody. Um, and so, but I wanted to tell you how we became Catholic. And so, in many ways, over the years, I got to learn more and more and more. But, a lot of Catholics that see me in church, that see, Rose and I, all our whole family in church, they think, I was kind of like born in, Catholic diapers, but that's not the case at all. And I'm very thankful that, we had an opportunity to where, God had, Jesus had put it out to where, it's like, and you need to make the choice. It's like, are you going to do this or are you going to do that? And I'm thankful that we're allowed to do that. So I'm going to take I'm going to go ahead and, for right now, I'm going to take a break here. And I want to talk to you in the next video about the trillion miracles. The trillion miracles that I have been given, that we have received. And I want you to hear about it, because I think for people